and other systems, I'll just touch the important parts and we'll move ahead. So central nervous system, common questions in central nervous system, ascending tracts, descending tracts can be asked as long question. The sensations carried by these tracts or the functions of the descending tracts can be asked. Cerebellum can be asked as a long question, quite rarely, but still it is asked sometimes. And many SAQs can be asked, like properties of synapse, receptor, functions of hypothalamus, pain physiology, then functions of cerebellum, sympathetic and parasympathetic functions, CSF, functions of spinal cord, etc. And in basal ganglia also, Parkinsonism, these applied short notes can be asked. So spinal cord, as we all know, it's a continuation of brainstem. There is a dorsal horn, ventral horn, and anterolateral horn. There is a gray matter and white matter. This is the structure of spinal cord, we all know. Okay, so gray matter and white matter. Gray posterior column is the sensory and anterior column is the motor one. Okay, and this is the central canal through which CSF, in which CSF is present. Okay. So what are the structures present in each part? Anterior horn, lateral horn, posterior horn, as just now I have described. Then spinal nerve is formed as a mixed nerve of sensory and sensory, that is dorsal root, and ventral, that is motor root. Functions, sometimes it can be asked. It connects with the peripheral nervous system, acts as a coordinating center for reflexes, and it gives origin to the autonomic nerves. So various ascending and descending tracts are present in different parts of the spinal cord. As you can see here, dorsal column tracts, fasciculus gracilis, cuneatus, etc. Okay, so various ascending tracts are shown here and descending are shown here. Okay, so going to the ascending tracts, students generally they have a phobia or fear for central nervous system. I don't know why. It can be made simple and it can be understood very well. So sensory fibers from periphery ascend to the brain through spinal cord. And three important tracts I'm mentioning here: dorsal column tract, spinothalamic tract, and spinocerebellar tract. So dorsal column tract, it ends in the parietal lobe of the cerebral cortex. Spinothalamic ends in the thalamus, and spinocerebellar ends in the cerebellum. The names are self-explanatory. Okay. So sometimes dorsal column tract is asked as a long question. As you can see here, from dorsal root, it is entering, the fibers are entering here and they're ascending up. And they're ascending in the posterior part of the spinal cord. So it is called as dorsal column tract. Okay. When they ascend up, there is the lower fibers are medially and upper fibers, they are laterally. Okay, they form two tracts, fasciculus gracilis, which is medial, and cuneatus, that is lateral. And here there is synapse. So first order neuron is this dorsal root ganglion, and there is a synapse in the medulla where two nuclei are present, as nucleus cuneatus and nucleus gracilis. So origin is the dorsal root ganglion. Then medial fibers are tract of Gall or fasciculus gracilis, and lateral fibers are tract of Buda or fasciculus cuneatus. Right. Now these fibers ascend up. Here the second order neurons will begin in the medulla and they will cross on the opposite side and will ascend. Okay. Then when they ascend here, first again the synapse here in the thalamus, and third order neurons will begin here and they will go to the parietal lobe of the cortex. So in the medulla, there are two nuclei, nucleus gracilis and cuneatus, and in the thalamus, the synapse in the posterolateral nucleus. So a simple diagram can be drawn like this, because most of the time there is difficulty in drawing the diagrams of the tracts. Okay, what I have shown here, this is just a midline. Okay, now two segments I have shown. of the spinal cord. This is the fiber coming from sacral, coccygeal, and lower thoracic segments, lumbar and lower thoracic. So this is fasciculus gracilis. The upper part fibers, they are entering in the upper segments, and they are occupying the lateral part. So this is the fasciculus cuneatus. Here in the medulla, there is synapse. After synapsing, there is decussation or crossing on the opposite side. The fibers run in medial lemniscus. In the thalamus, there is a synapse. Again, third order neurons will ascend up in the parietal lobe, that is the somatosensory area number 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so this is a simplified diagram of the ascending tract. So, what are the sensations carried by tract? So commonly as a short note. So fine touch, proprioception, vibration sense, pressure sense, tactile discrimination, tactile localization, and stereognosis. Should know the meaning of each. What do you mean by this, and how they are tested? If you can write this clinically, how they are tested, so this will be well and good. The meaning, 7 types of sensations they are carried by dorsal column tract. Okay, so this can be asked as a short note. Then other tracts, spinocerebellar, going to cerebellum, they carry unconscious kinesthetic sensations for coordinating the motor activity by cerebellum. And spinothalamic tract carries pain and temperature sensation and crude touch. Okay, spinothalamic separately you have to understand the root, origin, and course of this tract and the sensations. Pain sensation has been given a separate category and importance because it is a very important sensation. So spinothalamic is having similar course. This is a comparison between the two tracts. Now this is the dorsal column tract as we have studied just now. Okay, and this is the lateral spinothalamic tract, where when the nerve fibers of this tract enter the spinal cord, they synapse here and immediately they cross. So crossing in case of spinothalamic tract is occurring at the level of spinal cord itself, while in case of dorsal column tract, the crossing is occurring at the level of medulla. So this you have to remember. And when the fibers ascend up, most of the fibers will end in the thalamus, and only few fibers will go to the parietal lobe. Okay, spinothalamic tract. And similarly, there are descending tracts. So I'll just skip this part. I'll go ahead. Pyramidal tract, I'll just mention you the functions. Descending tracts, 2 types, pyramidal and extrapyramidal. Pyramidal is more evolved and involved in skilled movement. So fine skilled movements of distal joints. Then it's a part of superficial reflexes like plantar and abdominal reflex. They influence the stretch reflex and voluntary control of micturition and defecation. These are the important functions of pyramidal tract. Other than pyramidal tract, which originates in the cerebral cortex, there are extrapyramidal tracts which originate from lower structures in the brainstem. So these are the names of the extrapyramidal tracts. So olivospinal, rubrospinal, reticulospinal, etc. Functions, they are involved in regulation of muscle tone, regulation of posture, maintenance of equilibrium, and gross postural movements of the proximal joints. So this is a simplified enumeration of the functions, overall functions. So you should know these terms: paralysis, paresis, hemiplegia, paraplegia, monoplegia, etc. Okay. I'll just go skip this part and go ahead because we have to cover other systems as well. To know the differences between UMN and LMN paralysis, that is upper motor neuron and lower motor neuron paralysis. The concept of upper motor neuron and lower motor neuron you have to understand. Coming to pain physiology, pain has been given importance because it is a protective sensation. It tells you that something is wrong in the body. Okay, so it could be classified in various ways. Physiological point of view, this classification is important: fast and slow pain. Okay, so fast pain is perceived immediately. It's a sharp and acute pain, and the purpose is to react rapidly. It is well localized. While after some time of injury, we experience low pain. It is associated with tissue destruction. Then the purpose is because it continues, it doesn't get relieved. Okay, so to relieve the cause of pain, to pay attention towards the site of the pain and to do some measure to relieve it. Now A delta fibers, they carry fast pain, and C fibers carry the slow pain. Receptors for pain, they are called as nociceptors, and different tracts. Spinothalamic tract is the one which carries pain sensation, but that too neospinothalamic tract for fast pain and paleospinothalamic for slow pain. So as this is the same pathway that we have studied just now. Okay, the fibers also pass to the various nuclei, that is reticular nuclei. Pain keeps the person awake. Okay, for pain suppression, there are some areas which will reduce the pain, and hypothalamic and limbic system, which creates the behavioral and emotional responses to the pain. Pain inhibition can be asked as a short note. I'll skip through it. I'll go to the visceral pain and referred pain. This can be asked from the deep viscera. The pain that is produced, that is called as visceral pain, and there is spasm or ischemia of the viscera, then it can cause pain. Okay, so most of the times visceral pain is referred. So what is referred pain? Irritation of visceral organ produces pain in the somatic structures away from the site of viscera, and various examples are given. For example, diaphragmatic irritation in cholecystitis, it causes pain at the tip of the shoulder. Okay, so the problem is in the gallbladder, but pain is occurring at the tip of the shoulder, right shoulder. Okay, so this is referred pain. There are many other examples. What is the importance of referred pain? The diseases, they are diagnosed early. If you know the referred pain, some diseases can be diagnosed early by application of clinical knowledge of the referred pain. Okay, going ahead. Synapse can be asked as a short note, where you should know the classification of the synapse, anatomical classification, then functional classification, chemical synapse and electrical synapse. This is the structure of the synapse, similar to that of neuromuscular junction, a neuron ending here and next neuron here, and this is showing many neurotransmitter vesicles, mitochondria, and this is the synaptic cleft, the space between the two neurons, and these are the receptors for the neurotransmitter that is released here. Okay, the mechanism of stimulation is almost same, just like in neuromuscular junction. Now this is the mechanism. The action potential reaches the axon, then there is opening of calcium channels, neurotransmitter is released, and this neurotransmitter binds with the receptor on the postsynaptic neuron, and there are changes in the membrane permeability in the postsynaptic neuron, and that causes change in the RMP. Now we have written change means which side, negative or positive, that is decided by the type of neurotransmitter. Okay, so it could be excitation because of excitatory neurotransmitter. So EPSP is produced, or there is inhibition, IPSP is produced. So either excitation or inhibition in the postsynaptic neuron. So this is the resting neuron with minus 65 voltage. Now with excitation, the RMP has this is depolarization. Minus 65 has changed to minus 45, positive side, excitation. And in inhibition, this has become more negative. Okay, this is inhibition. Now, various factors affect the synaptic transmission. This can be also asked as a short note. Properties is also commonly asked as a short note. So, one-way conduction, always there is a conduction from presynaptic to postsynaptic. Fatigue, repeated stimulation causes fatigue. Synaptic delay, some time is required for transmission, 0.5 milliseconds, so this is delay. Convergence and divergence, depending on the structure or arrangement of the fibers, there could be convergence or divergence. Properties continued here. Summation, occlusion, habituation, and post-tetanic potentiation are some of the important properties of the synapse. Receptors are also commonly asked. These are biological transducers. There are various classifications. One is based on the type of the stimulus: mechanoreceptor, thermo, nociceptors, chemoreceptors, osmoreceptors, etc. And with examples you can explain. Then other classification based on location, where it is present. Superficial receptor is present in the skin and mucous membrane. Deep receptor in the muscles and the tendons. Visceral receptors, they are present in the deep viscera. Okay, these sometimes they are asked in MCQs, where they are present, what is their function, etc. So these are the diagrams of the receptors. And one more classification, it is based on adaptation: fast adapting, intermediate, and non-adapting. Adaptation means they get used to the stimulus. They are not responding to the stimulus further. Okay, that is fast adaptation. Then go ahead with properties of receptor. Few important properties you should mention, that is specificity. They are specific for a specific sensation. Then intensity discrimination. They can assess the amplitude or the strength of the stimulus. Then adaptation is one of the important properties, as we have seen in the classification. You can write the classification here in the, while writing this property. The law of projection, this is also one of the important property. Cerebellum sometimes can be asked as a long question. I'll directly move to the functions of the cerebellum because this is covered in anatomy as well. So once you learn about the functions of cerebellum, most of you know the function, yes. So you can put it as an excuse if at all there is an accident, you can say that there is a problem with my cerebellum. Okay, jokes apart, I'll just move to the functions of cerebellum. So you can divide it into three parts: archicerebellum or vestibulocerebellum. This is the oldest part of the cerebellum. The function is maintenance of posture and equilibrium. Paleocerebellum or spinocerebellum. This is involved in regulation of muscle tone. Neocerebellum or cerebrocerebellum. It is involved in coordination of voluntary motor activity, timing, planning, and sequencing function. So I'll just move ahead because I have to cover one more topic, that is endocrines and reproductive system. Okay, functions of hypothalamus is one of the favorite question, and it is favorite for students also. They write very well. You have to enumerate and write the functions of the, or detailed writing of two or more functions of the hypothalamus. Then in spatial senses, we have taste, smell, vision, hearing. So here, common questions I'll write here. SAQs are commonly asked on spatial senses, in refractive errors in case of vision. Visual pathway sometimes can be asked. Dark adaptation can be asked. In case of ear, organ of Corti, functions of middle ear, basilar membrane can be asked. Taste and smell, taste buds, olfaction, factors influencing taste sensation can be asked. So these are the common short notes asked in the spatial senses. So this is the structure of the eyeball, as you all know. 3 layers of it: sclera, choroid, and retina. So refractive errors are commonly asked. How to go about it? This you are studying still since your school days. Myopia, hypermetropia, presbyopia, and astigmatism. 4 refractive errors commonly we study. Okay, myopia, where the image is formed because of the elongated eyeball, the image is formed in front of the retina. That is the definition of myopia. In hypermetropia, the image is formed behind the retina. And you can make a table like this, wherein you can include the name of the error, refractive error. What is the definition of it? What is the cause of this error? What are the symptoms by the patient? Like in myopia, unable to see distant objects. Okay, and what is the correction for the error? So if you make a table like this, you can easily revise it in very less time. Okay, so myopia, hypermetropia, presbyopia, and astigmatism. So 4 refractive errors, you can make a table like this. I think there is no need to explain the diagrams and the table, they are self-explanatory. Okay, so this is again a tip to study more syllabus in less time. Sometimes visual pathway can be asked as a diagram. So here you should know the concept of fields of vision. Okay, field of vision for every eye, it is divided into nasal and temporal fields. Okay, and the rays from temporal field, they are coming to the nasal part of the retina and vice versa. Okay, now the fibers from the retina, the fibers from the nasal side, they cross, and the fibers from the temporal side, they do not cross. Okay, so these are the few important points you should remember while learning the visual pathway. The first part, these are the 2 eyeballs, right and left. So from retina, first there is optic nerve. Optic nerve, here there is crossing. This part is optic chiasma. Remember, the crossing is only for the nasal fibers and not for the temporal fibers. Okay. After crossing, this part is optic tract. Then this is the thalamus, where there is synapse. This is the lateral geniculate body of the thalamus, and the fibers which continue from here up to the cortex. This is the geniculocalcaline tract, and this occipital cortex is also called as visual cortex. Okay, there are some lesions which can take place at various places, and they will produce corresponding loss in the visual field. Okay, if you know this is well and good, but at least the tract you should know. Then in case of ear, there are 3 parts of the ear: outer, external, middle, and inner ear. Functions of each you should know. In middle ear is asked, middle ear functions. I'll directly move to the functions: amplification of the sound, impedance matching, attenuation reflex, and equalization of pressure. These 4 important functions you should cover while writing the functions of middle ear, with explanation of impedance matching, because there is a surface area factor and there is a force factor, both contribute to the amplification of the sound. Then attenuation reflex, how it is protective for large sounds, and what is the significance of the reflex, you should write. Then the pressure between nasopharynx and middle ear, it is equalized with the help of eustachian tube. Inner ear, structure of cochlea, you should know the membranes present in the cochlea, the basilar membrane and Reisner's membrane, and how do they divide them into 3 cavities. Okay. And basilar membrane, how it is helping in, because it gives on basilar membrane, the organ of Corti is present, and high frequency sounds vibrate the basilar membrane at the base, and low frequency sounds vibrate it at the apex. Depending on the pitch of the sound is identified. The structure of organ of Corti, the hair cells and how it gets stimulated, that you should know. Auditory pathway is much less asked as compared to visual pathway. And the applied aspects like deafness, types of deafness, conductive, sensory neural, its causes, you should know. And the common tests which are done to assess the deafness. Rinne's test, Weber's test, and audiometry is the more sophisticated test. Then taste sensation, taste buds are sometimes asked. The structure of taste buds, various primary tests which are detected by these taste buds, location of the taste buds, the papillae, and what is the pathway for taste sensation. Right? So I'm quickly moving ahead. Similarly, in the olfactory mucosa and the pathway, sometimes it is asked, and applied part. So coming to endocrines, common questions. LAQ can be asked on thyroid hormones, anterior hormones, anterior pituitary hormones, or only on growth hormone. And these are asked more in biochemistry, hormones for glucose homeostasis and calcium homeostasis. And many short notes can be asked. Actions of any one hormone can be asked. Then applied points can be asked. Dwarfism, acromegaly, hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism. Applied importance or applied abnormalities of endocrines can be asked as a short note. So for studying endocrines, I suggest you to make a table like this. Make a chart, big chart, and paste it in your room. Include name of the hormone, the gland which is secreting the hormone, type of the hormone, whether it is a protein or steroid hormone or amino acid derivative, and what is the mechanism depending on the type of hormone. Then actions of the hormone, this is the big part of the chart. Then regulation of secretion and abnormalities which are related to the hormone. All important hormones you can include in this table like this, and this will make your revision very easy. In one glance, you can revise all the hormones and can cover many short notes here. Okay, similarly to hormones which are related to reproductive system, you can make a table like this, including all the hormones. So for example, I have written about growth hormone. In short, what can be included in the description. Now, thyroid hormone in short, we'll see the actions. T3, T4 and calcitonin, these are the three important hormones of thyroid. Okay. Synthesis, steps of synthesis of the hormone you should know. This diagram is important for understanding the steps in the synthesis. Actions of the thyroid hormones, there are many actions, and you should write in detail about the actions. Okay, actions on the growth, then basal metabolic rate and metabolic actions, including action on the carbohydrate, protein and fat metabolism, systemic actions on every system. Okay, so this is a very big topic. I'll just move ahead. In the same manner, you have to cover all the hormones just like I have described in the table. Okay, I'll just go to the reproductive system and I'll just give you the important questions which are asked on the reproductive system. Okay, so common questions on reproductive system. A long question can be asked on menstrual cycle, or short questions on hormonal control, actions of estrogen, progesterone, actions of testosterone, hormones of placenta, hormonal control of lactation, puberty, spermatogenesis, actions of testosterone, contraceptive methods can be asked. Okay, so it is not possible to cover all other things, and I have to restrict and follow the timings. So I end my session here, and our next speaker is Dr. Ashok Shinde. I'll just stop sharing my slides and hand over the session to Dr. Shinde.
Okay, thank